Welcome to the Labour Force. I'm Mchunu. Last week, Finance Minister Tito Mboweni searched the cat among the pigeons when he announced in his budget speech that government has decided to renegotiate the current wage agreement with public sector unions. The agreement was signed 2 years ago and now has 1 year to run beginning next month. In terms of the agreement, the country's 1.2 million civil servants, that's teachers, nurses and the police, among others, are due to receive a 7% increase from next month, which is the beginning of the new financial year. But now the government says it can no longer afford the increase, hence the move to renegotiate the agreement. The unions reject the move and are threatening to strike if the government doesn't back down. The government says public sector salaries have been growing at a rate significantly above inflation, and now it wants to reduce the rate of wage growth by 38 billion rand in the next financial year, 55 billion rand next year, and by 67 billion rand in the year after. At this point, it's worth taking a look at how public sector salaries have grown in the past decade. As we can see in our graph, which is going to come up just now, public sector wage bill has tripled from 110 billion rand in 2008 to well over 330 billion rand currently. Now, to discuss this highly controversial issue, we are joined in our Pretoria studio by the Minister of Public Service and Administration, Mr. Senzo Mchunu. As you can see, Mr.
Good afternoon.
Minister, are you there? You can hear me?
Yes, I'm there. Good afternoon to you.
Great, great. Minister, it's a pleasure to have you. You are the first minister to appear on our segment. But of course, the issue that we are discussing is a very sensitive one, especially for the lots and lots of public service workers out there. You are being accused at the government of bad faith negotiating, having signed an agreement, and now you say you can't afford to honor it. What's your response?
Well, our response is that no. Not at all, and we will never do such a thing as acting on a bad faith. We understand the history of this agreement. We even understand that at some point government insisted on a multi-year agreement, which was not necessarily or may not necessarily have been a position of Labour at that time, but it is true that possibly when this agreement was signed at the rate at which it was, there may be things that had not been envisaged in terms of economic development or economic growth rather, and the state of affairs and the fiscus of the state. Now, all we are saying now is that there is a problem that is confronting us, not necessarily as a department or as government, but it is confronting us as a country. And it is at a scale that requires leadership, not only political leadership in the form of ministers from government. It requires leadership from the side of Labour. It requires leadership from civil society. It requires leadership. It requires South Africa to delve deep into its leadership resources and put them at the service of the country at this point in time, because the kind of problems that we are facing, one, economic growth, that is actually economic decline at the moment, and then putting us in terms of the fiscus of the state at a precarious level. And this requires understanding of leadership. It requires leadership to discuss it. It requires leadership to engage. And then say, if indeed we conclude, all of us, that there is a problem, there is a challenge, we then find ways of resolving that. That's all that we are saying. Let's engage with the kind of problems that are facing us. And this is honest. That is why we bring in figures to demonstrate that this is what we have as a backup in terms of what we are initiating. It's not just something that is developing out of the air and just because we want to or not want to. And our approach is a very humble approach that say, let us discuss these matters. Let us say to all the other sectors of leadership, this is what we are saying, this is our sizing of it, and we conclude that there is a problem. But we then want to hear everybody else in leadership, including leadership of Labour, to say, do they see what we see? What is their take about it? And how do we find solutions for it? That's our approach. That is the issue.
Well, Minister, it seems like you have a lot of problems on your hands. One of them,
Yes.
of course, is time. This agreement, the implementation of the third year is due in the next few weeks at the beginning of next month. And the unions have
Yes.
flatly rejected what you're trying to do here. They are saying this is non-negotiable. In fact, even the idea of even talking about possibly renegotiating this is something they are against. They are against talking to you about this at all. What is happening currently right now as we speak?
Look, it's an issue we have no alternative for, except dealing with it in one way or the other. We have discussed at length in the past to say one of the options is not to do anything about the problem that has developed to this extent. And then we have discussed the implications of that in case we take that as a choice. And we realize and come to the conclusion that in case we take that choice, the implications are quite dire, not for government, not for Labour, but for the country. It's a sovereign matter. Two, we then say, in any case, leadership should not be defined as political leadership alone. Labour also has leadership, and all of us are leading at the national level. And all of us are leading in the interests of South Africa, which is our country, and its citizens. And when there's a problem like this, it is the duty of leadership to rise to the occasion and discuss the matter. I don't think that it is part of leadership to say there's no problem when there's a problem. We're not going to discuss when there's something to be discussed. And we're not going to save the country when it is time to save the country. And remember, there is no prescription on this matter that says it's going to be like this. We're open, really open, and just wanting to say, let us find a way of resolving the problems that our proposals are there to be considered, and they can be put aside if there are other possible solutions, especially if they are better than what we are proposing. And we talk. The principle here is that we need to sit and discuss, but I don't think that we have a choice of not discussing. What you are saying, I agree with. We have a problem. Yes, indeed, we have a problem as a country, but the issue is we need to resolve it.
Minister, just quickly, because we're running out of time, assuming that there won't be an agreement by the end of this month, April is upon us, what happens next month? There's no agreement about what you are seeking to do here. So what happens? What's going to happen?
Well, let me not speculate. I really would have loved to, but it hasn't come to a point where April really comes and we have no solution. But it's not to say that we're going to refuse to allow our heads to exercise our brains in all manner of ways. We are exercising, but we rather choose at the moment to focus on one thing: engagement, which is of paramount importance.
Well, fortunately, I've just been given a few extra minutes by my bosses, so I can pose one or two more questions to you, because this is quite an important issue.
Yes.
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 On the other hand, some of the unions, FEDUSA for instance, they are saying they are going to go ahead and declare a dispute over this, which could lead to a strike. COSATU themselves are also threatening to down tools over this issue. Should you go ahead and implement what you're trying to do here? Can you afford to risk a strike, schools getting shut down, hospitals running without nurses and so on, as we've seen in previous occasions, in previous years, when you do have a public strike? Is that something that you can afford to have here?
Not at all. First, let me give you 3 principles that are governing us in terms of our conduct on this matter as we move ahead. One is that we are not considering doing anything outside the chamber. In other words, everything that we want to do, discussing and so on, we are discussing all of us together. There is no way and there is no consideration whatsoever about us as government standing on a hill or a mountain and then dishing out executive decisions. We are not taking that route at all. Number 2, we are saying retrenchments are not a consideration whatsoever on this matter. Number 3, we are saying if you are getting, as we speak, 10,000 rand as your salary at the end of the month, or whatever other amount for that matter, it is not our consideration to take 50 rand from that amount, 1,000 rand from that amount, or whatever amount. That money is safe, it's in your pocket. In other words, it's not part of what we intend doing, to take money that is already inside the employees' pockets, and then we say we're covering and resolving the problems. We are talking going forward to say there seems to be concrete problems going forward without us having resolved some of the issues that are currently in place. That is what we're dealing with. It's not taking money out of people's pockets, but just dealing with what is coming and what we see coming. To say, do we all see what is coming? And if we see what is coming, we think it's problematic for the country. And if we see that it's problematic for the country, let's resolve it. That is our approach. And this, I must emphasize, it's not just focusing on the wage bill. We are starting from saying, and our approach as a whole says, the cost of running public administration in the Republic of South Africa is too big. It's huge. And we then say, number 2, what are the cost drivers of this high cost of running public administration in the Republic? We find certain cost drivers. 1, it is in the form of benefits that accrue to people in the executive, both nationally, provincially, and locally, that accrue to the other arms of government, the judiciary, parliament, both nationally and in the legislatures. And we are saying we need to deal with those matters. That's why our approach is that, yes. And then there are leaks and so on, and then the bill is cost driver number 3 as well.
Minister, there's a lot more we can still talk about. It's quite an important issue, but we really appreciate you making time to come and talk to us.
I see that you are economizing, but I still appreciate the time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, that's all the time we have for the Labour Force this week. See you again next week. It's bye for now.